These two concepts are key to understanding what's going on in the polls right now. Recent research shows that although British voters are now spread across multiple different parties, we can broadly think of them as being in two blocks. A more left-wing bloc of like Labour, Lib Dem and Green voters, and a more right-wing bloc of Conservative and Reform supporters. What that means is that although the sort of electoral map of the UK changed a lot at the last election, and although that did involve lots of people switching their vote from the previous election, most of that switching was between parties within the same bloc and not between the blocs. So, for example, lots of previous Conservative voters voting for Reform, or lots of previous Lib Dem voters voting for Labour. And this bloc structure continues to shape volatility in the polls. At the last general election, the Labour Party did really well out of this kind of bloc structure of politics. On the one hand, the right bloc was divided between Reform and Conservative voters, which meant that in a lot of constituencies, neither of those parties ended up with a large enough share of the vote to actually win the seat. On the other hand, the Labour Party really targeted seats that it could actually win at the election, and sort of ignored a lot of those seats where it would have too much competition from the Lib Dems, which effectively encouraged sort of left bloc voters in those seats to vote tactically for the Liberal Democrats and ultimately took more and more seats away from the Conservatives. But now the left-wing bloc of the electorate is becoming more and more fragmented, with people who previously voted Labour now saying they'd be more likely to vote for the Lib Dems or increasingly the Greens. And if your party can make itself seem like a viable electoral force, not a small if, then this fragmentation could just become more pronounced. I made a video about your party, which you could also consider watching if you haven't already. Meanwhile, the right-wing bloc has consolidated a lot more behind Reform, becoming less and less fragmented between the two parties. About a quarter of people currently saying they would vote Reform voted Conservative in 2024, and they've also won over a lot of people who didn't vote at the last election. And this potentially gives Reform enough support to win loads of those seats where it came second or third in the last election. Follow me for more analysis like this of what's going on in British politics.